quarter page to an 8th page. And usually a company that's in this industry, no one else in this industry is cutting back on their advertising. This may be an indication that something's going on with this company and we should consider it. Mix that with some other things that are going on and the ability of XBRL to be able to take and granularly and consistently take the information that the SEC is so important for so long. Information like, do you have a customer who's responsible for more than 10% of your revenues? If you can go in a consistent way, know who every vendor's 10% customers are, and who their 10% customers are, and who their 10% customers are, and be able to build a web that if you know this company and that company is starting to do their advertising cutback, something's going on there, and be able to see how that proliferates through the web. And then either go in and help them if you help people who are in distress, or stay away from them if you don't like to invest with people in distress. Some amazing things can happen with XBRL.
So potentially, some amazing things can happen with XBRL. I believe it, and I try to do it on a daily basis.
Yes, some amazing things.
Some amazing things can happen. Michelle, we often care about with financials a company's interest in another company. So this kind of is going to relate back to the cloud concept. Can you maybe think of a couple of scenarios where my company's, or maybe the investment decision I'm making, or what I want to know about relationships amongst companies, where the investment in another company can result in either an epiphany of an investment decision, or maybe something that detracts. There are different relationships between interests that you've seen in the footnotes.
So, I mean, I think, obviously there's a lot of things that we look for. So we have at least like 200 different alerts that we're looking through, and anytime one of those comes through, we're kind of taking a look at that. But I mean, it could be anything. It could be, it could be a pension disclosure. It could be a tax footnote. What if I told you that, the year before Global Crossing went belly up, their effective tax rate was like something like 120%. Now, how do you say, how could a company have 120% tax rate? That should have set off some kind of red flag. And that's the sort of thing, like if you can get to that number quickly, whatever your tried and true signal is, I mean, whether it's the would've, should've, could've, or whether it's like, for me, I love to look at that effective tax rate for a fraud. Things like that. I think anything that would allow you to surface that information, more quickly, more efficiently, is great. I mean, I love to look at, sometimes to even look at the interrelationships between filings. So, I'll look at something and I'll say, okay, that was in the 10K. What is the 10Q? We wait for the following quarter. What does the Q have to say about it? And how does that change? And what was it, what's the different language, or how do they describe it differently? Another really funny example, this is again from very early on, but if you look at if you think back, to AOL, early AOL, and you look at like their, something simple like, actually, let me go to a different example. We're looking at a company called Bob Evans, restaurant company. That some of you may be familiar with, an Ohio-based.
Great eggs and sausages. I used to live in Ohio.
Okay.
They make good financial statements.
So their financial statements aren't that bad. But we were looking at this company earlier, like a couple months ago. What was interesting to me was that they had invested in this other chain. They bought this other chain called Mimi's. And we love to look. I mean, one of the things we love is like mergers gone bad. Those are like, that's my next like fun thing is like, most deals, I wouldn't say most deals, but a lot of deals are just bad. It's like two people get together and they love each other, and then the deal goes, it's like it wasn't a lot of thinking. Not, of course, footnote of Morningstar. But anyway, so Bob Evans was had bought Mimi's, and it was very clear that Mimi's was not doing so well for the company. They were struggling. A lot of the Mimi's outlets are in California and in Arizona, and places where the housing, where the crisis has been particularly acute. And one of the things we counted up, we wanted to try to see, like, well, how are they trying to wrap their heads? And we just wanted to see how many times do they mention Mimi's in their 10K from, and they're looking at charting it out to see how many times did they mention Mimi's in their last couple of filings. So we looked at it, and okay, you look at the 10Q from, let's say 6 quarters ago, and Mimi's is mentioned like 4 or 5 times. And then you go to the next queue and it's mentioned like 8 times. And then you go to the next queue and it's mentioned 12 times. And then the K is mentioned maybe like 14. And then all of a sudden you get to the next queue and it's mentioned like 40 times. And you're starting to say like, oh, really? They're amping that up a little bit. Now, how do you do that? The only way to really look at that is to actually go into each filing and look at it manually. I mean, it's really like a pain in the neck. And if you multiply that by the number of companies you would have to do that with to try to really ascertain that they're having a problem with this particular acquisition, you know, you can start to see how the problem is really a significant issue. And that's something very simple, like just something stupid, like counting the number of times they're mentioning the name. I mean, like literally, it's like something I can train, you know, not even my dog. My dog is much more serious.
Your cat could do it too.
My cat could do it, yeah, I don't have a cat. My 10-month-old baby could probably handle that and just count up the number of times that like Mimi's was appearing in these filings and saying, okay, you know, this is clearly becoming a big issue.
Yeah, what about across filings and across periods for many, many periods? That's probably not fun for your cat at all.
No.
And so what's great as a data nerd, right? I can look up Mimi's from filing to filing because it's housed in a data warehouse. I can look at, and it transcends the paper copies that you would have to pull up as a separate file. And you have to pull it up because now it's stored as a database. And so there's a plug for XBRL. But let's talk about the who.
Well, but instead of the who, let's think about what we just talked through, right? And remember I talked about data center versus document center. We talked about Ks, we talked about Qs, they happen on a quarterly basis, right? And we are still thinking about the way that we look at companies in a time-based way. And so when I think about the full potential of XBRL, I say, well, if all of this information is tagged already, what is a filing, really, right? I mean, why do I have to wait until a paper gets generated? That data is creating itself every single day, 365 days a year. And so, in a power to the people sort of thing, you know, I'd like to be able to have a lens into that data all the time. And so, from a cloud perspective, you know, part of what makes information private is if who I am is not in exactly the same database as what I am, then I can be transparent and be private at the same time. So think about the mortgage-backed securities problem, right? I had to wait for these filings on a quarterly basis, and even worse, the data that was there, I couldn't see it all, right? I couldn't see across Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and all the banks. And if I could see out into the little c cloud and see everything in a transparent way, I don't even know who holds that mortgage, but I want to be able to see into the data through the walls of the database, get at those nuggets and say, you know what, we got a problem here, right? And so that's how I think about what happens when the internet looks different. We don't wait for 10Ks anymore, right? We should be able to look at this every single day, and whatever combination an investor wants to look at it, should be able to look at it in their way.
So, Mr. Cohen, XBRL creating transparency without the cloud concept. I think as I close before we go into a questions section, because I think everybody here deserves a question, there's only a few of us, so please think of one quick.
We've managed to clear the room.
We managed
all of this.
all this
All this geek talk.
Financials, I don't even know if it's the right kind of geek talk, but you have a bunch of accountants that like, you know, semantic-based web and XML and different things that it's a challenge that the government mandated and it's intended to create transparencies, and it's trying to, and it does, and I encourage any developer to go to the SEC's website, you know, figure out where the data is located and use this data to create your own model and leverage the data.
Yeah.
But
And before you move on, Jordan, I think a really important point on the impact of XBRL is what David Siegel talked about in his book, right? Which is, if you look at all of this talk about the semantic web and all the rest of it, XBRL really is one of the first interactive data standards, whether it's mandated or not, that has gotten traction to really creating a beachhead of a real semantic web with a controlled vocabulary.
Well, and that back into the healthcare issue. We went to a couple healthcare panels, and you know, where is my health stored? Why do I have to, you know, get health generated from one physician to the next? And how come that's not standardized and relative to me? It's perfect cloud concept, perfect, you know, a way that XBRL can be leveraged. Just like, nobody's created the standard.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Google, for example, Google Health. I mean, Google Health is nothing more than 21st century